This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com. The
time, one that we create, or do we? Welcome to the May episode of Through the Looking Glass. I am your co-host, Scott Criscuolo. I am refreshed. I am back. Of course, the jokes will be flying throughout the PTB Wrestling Network shows over the next couple of weeks because I have returned from my first cruise in 9 years. And the first thing I asked everybody when I returned was, did Tony Khan and Triple H hug on Thursday night Raw-Namite? Is CM Punk beating Roman at SummerSlam? Is Seth Rollins, is Brock Lesnar going to beat MJ? All sorts of crazy, because that's what usually happens. I go on a cruise and the wrestling world melts. So, but in any event. But it didn't happen. There was a little Punk drama, apparently, which I have to catch up on.
I remember that very first trip. I remember listening to that very first return and the whole Punk pipe bomb.
Exactly. Good evening, everybody, to the great Dave Hall. Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing well, Scott. I'm doing well. I'm glad that you're back. I'm glad that the industry hasn't collapsed under you while you've been away. Look, it looked like, it looked for a while like something big might happen, but there's been lots of rumors of people making returns on television, but it didn't. So you managed to get away with one this time.
I did get very lucky. I enjoyed my week. It was very nice, and I came back and everything seemed relatively normal. So that's a good thing. So I didn't come back and end up on the other side. My cruise ship didn't stop on the other side of the looking glass or something weird. So, but anyway, Dave, always a pleasure. Love being with you. And everyone, for those that are new, welcome. This show is not episodic. So if you're listening to this show, keep listening. You didn't miss anything from the previous episodes because these all are standalones. But after you finish, please go to the archive, ptb.podbean.com. And placetobe.podbean.com. God, I was gone for a while. I had the ultimate drink package, so God only knows what I'm doing right now. If I start talking about the NWA, then I may be in trouble. But anyway, but please check out all of the great stuff we have. But for this great show, it is not episodic. So continue listening to this episode, but then go back to the archives and check out all the great episodes we had before this. So we're going to have a ton of fun tonight because we haven't actually ever done this before. We're doing an interactive. Well, I mean, we do, but this is very different. I'm actually looking forward to this month's episode because we've never really done anything like this before. We've rebooked, but this is kind of an on-the-fly thing. Usually our stuff, I mean, we have a little research, but normally our stuff is very researched. But tonight we're kind of pseudo-winging it, which I kind of dig. But Dave, tell us, well, first off, how have you been? I think I could definitely say that my weather was probably slightly warmer than yours, but I'm not sure.
Well, you probably warmer where you've just been cruising around. We're starting to cool down over here. 18 Celsius today, which is still pretty mild from as we head into winter. It's a mild temperature for you North Americans, but it's still lovely. It's a beautiful place, Australia. If you guys are listening, have never been down here, I encourage you, jump on a plane, come on down to visit. You can come and stay with me for a few days. I'm happy to put you up for a couple of nights and
wonderful.
Show you around. But no,
wonderful.
It's a beautiful country to come and visit. So
yes.
The weather is it's fantastic all the time. So yeah, but no, going well. My just spent the weekend celebrating the 14th birthday of my youngest son. So my youngest son turned 14 and he had 10 teenage friends over with him for an afternoon of video games and movies, and I went to sport while my wife had to look after them all. So I think I worked out the best way to deal with that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, happy birthday to the baby boy. It was warm down. It actually was chilly after we passed Nassau in the Bahamas and had 2 days at sea. The more we got closer to here, the choppier and the little colder the water got. So, in any event. All right. So, Dave, why don't you tell everyone what our plan is for this evening? Because it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited what we're doing tonight.
That's it. Well, May is a pretty notorious month. A lot of changes often happen in the company, sort of coming out of WrestleMania. April, May, you always get the shift of direction, the change of scenery. The company loves to WWE loves to share with us, and I thought it'd be interesting task to go back and have a little bit of a look at the 2002 brand extension. This is a very pivotal moment in company history. There are a lot of changes, a very massive shift in what the product was like from the WWE's perspective. And, it's been fun listening to some of the other podcasts on our quad of pods doing drafts and having some fun with that. And I thought it would be fun for us to redraft the 2002 brand extension draft. And that's what we're going to do live on the show today. Scott and I are going to draft the Raw and Smackdown rosters of 2002. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk a little bit more about the details shortly, but Scott, I want to ask you, like as I said, the 2002 draft, that brand extension was revolutionary at the time. It really brought a lot of questions to mind for a lot of people. What were they doing? Why were they doing it? But I think with the hindsight of history, I think the brand extension allowed a lot more superstars to be developed, guys be able to rise to the top of the card that may never have had that opportunity. When the brand extension was first announced, when it first happened back in 2002, how did you perceive it? What were you thinking was going on, and how did you think it would go?
Well, it didn't surprise me because obviously when the Monday Night War ended and, WCW lost and, we had the influx of guys and and I just watched the whole saga on one of my chrono watches, the entire invasion, which started off good, but it was evident. I mean, just on a side note, the invasion, I would say by Unforgiven, like September, they stopped caring. It was all about preparing for the future, pumping up Booker, pumping up RVD, and and Jericho and getting ready for the future. Nobody cared who was going to win the invasion. Everyone knew WWF was going to win. It was just a question of when they would finally end it. They decided to end it at Survivor Series. And then we moved on. As we got into 2002, and then, we got past WrestleMania, but now but then all the heavyweights came. Well, most of them came. We had the NWO came, so we have Nash, we have Hall, we have Hogan. And we just had this large November. Yeah. We had this large influx of guys, and eventually November again, Scott Steiner would come, and then by the following year we'd have Goldberg, etc. But even at this point in March of 2002, the roster was just so big. And I think it was about time for Vince to really take advantage of all of this talent and get rid of the glass ceiling, because now he had competition in other ways. WCW was dead, ECW was dead, but coming up in the next, let's see, looking at my calendar, Ring of Honor had started the month before in February. And you could hear about the origins of that on our one of our newer shows here on the network, the Pod of Honor, with myself and Steve Willie. And then in June, in a few months' time, we would have the beginning of TNA. So, I mean, that competition's not the level of WCW, but still, we weren't just going to no one was just going to let WWE be the know-all, end-all, be-all. So at this point, Vince needed to come up with something revolutionary and start to elevate the guys everybody likes without shaking up the main event picture that he already had. So this was a great idea, and I was very excited about it because at the time they were going to shift, you know, you were going to have one champion on both shows. I think you were going to get a lot of work out of the Intercontinental title because obviously the world champion can only feud with one guy at a time. Although I was curious too, Dave, if they were going to do kind of what like Ric Flair did during the territory years, which is kind of bounce around, have different feuds with different guys. I'm wondering if they were going to try and pull that off. We could talk about that as we move forward tonight. Because I was curious if they were going to attempt to do that, if they were going to attempt to have one world champion try to bounce from one show to the other and alternate feuds. Maybe even attempt to do face on one side, heel on the other. That would have been fun. A little tough to do.
Yeah, it certainly looked that way when they first started the draft and they first head in that direction. I mean, Triple H was sort of made exempt, and they were saying each pay-per-view would be, you know, one brand would challenge for the title, the next show, then the other brand would challenge. So I think that was their original intention, but I wonder if the way the industry and the business was functioning by 2002, you couldn't. I think they learned quickly you couldn't really do without your top champion. Not sort of jumping from one to the other, and therefore one brand's not really getting a look at the title for a period of 4 weeks. But then and I think it also got away from the idea of building to a good championship feud where two guys are going to have a battle for 3 or 4 months. Like Steamboat and Flair did in '89. You guys have been covering that on the live watch, and that's that concept. You just can't have those multiple rematches if you're shifting brands each month.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the idea. I don't know if they were ever thinking about a second title, but we will kind of allude to that tonight. But we had one tag team title, we had the Intercontinental title, we did have one women's champion. Did we have a cruiserweight champion at this point?
Yep. Tajiri was the cruiserweight champion.
Yeah, because Tajiri. Well, I remember at the time Tajiri was a cruiserweight champion, and technically X-Pac was still the light heavyweight champion. They hadn't merged those because X-Pac got hurt at the back end of the invasion, so he didn't come back for a couple of months. And then by the summertime, they would eventually merge those, like they would merge the European and the hardcore title and just kind of get rid of them. But yeah, I think it's fascinating. I'm very excited what we're gonna do tonight. So lay the foundation for us, Dave. What is the soup we're going to boil this evening?
So as I said, Scott and I are going to take on the role. Essentially, we're not taking on the role of the GM. We're not sort of doing Vince McMahon, Ric Flair. We're going to take it on from the perspective of production. One of us will be drafting for Raw. The other one will be drafting for SmackDown. And everyone on the roster is eligible to be drafted to one of the brands. That includes our champions, Triple H, Billy and Chuck. Our women's champion was Jazz at the time, so they're all eligible. All our commentators are eligible. Our general manager type people, our authority figures are eligible. We've put together the whole roster. We've got everyone on there, and everyone is eligible to be picked. We're going to be picking, just for the purpose of this episode, we're going to pick 30 guys to a roster, and then we're going to go through, and on the people who are available are not just the guys who were signed with the company as of the day of the brand extension, but knowing where the company was headed and some of the guys coming in, we've also made the decision that anyone who sort of joined the company within a few months, 3 to 4 months after the brand extension, are also eligible. So that means guys like Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Shawn Michaels, they're all eligible to be drafted as well because they became mainstays of the roster. Eric Bischoff is eligible to be drafted. And then what we're going to do is we are going to draft 4 to 5 guys, talent from OVW, people who will join our roster over the course of the year. So we're going to build a roster of about 30 guys plus some OVW talent. And then after that, we're going to look at what we've put together and we're going to try and come up with, each of us will come up with for our own roster, a bit of a direction. Who are we going to utilize as our top talents? What are sort of the key battles we want to see for the next few months? Who are we looking to elevate? Maybe what tag teams we might want to put together. Gimmicks, who we might be utilizing. So, yeah, there's a lot in there. I hope everyone's able to follow it. But the basic thrust of it is we are drafting the Raw and SmackDown rosters. And we have a little benefit here that they didn't have in O2, and that is we have the benefit of hindsight.
Correct.
We know the direction that some people's careers are going, have the ability and potential to go. We know that Bradshaw in 2003, 2004, changed his gimmick to something that was quite marketable, the JBL gimmick. And he was able to utilize that and further his career in a way that had never been done before. We know that guys like Bubba Ray Dudley and Christian went to another company and were able to reinvent themselves and be utilized in ways they never recognized before and became major players. So we know they have the ability and potential to be higher than they ever were in 2002.
Correct.
We also know that Steve Austin is going to succumb to his long-term injuries just 12 months later. So with all that in mind, who are we going to pick and how are we going to use them? Those are the questions that we're going to answer soon. So we've got hindsight. There's a lot of benefits of hindsight. There's drawbacks. The Rock. We know The Rock goes on to become one of the biggest movie stars ever. Picking The Rock has the challenge of how do you navigate his move into Hollywood, which had already started in 2002 anyway. So yeah, we've got some fun. We also know which OVW guys are really going to make it. We know that guys like John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, they're the cream of the crop. But our other guys perhaps had potential who maybe weren't utilised better. Who knows? We're going to look at all that. Who gets who? It's going to be fun. So, as I said, the only person who is not eligible in this draft is Vince McMahon. As the owner, as the man who is likely going to appear on both sides of both brands anyway, we've made him completely ineligible. Everyone else is up for grabs. And there are 2 picks that contain 2 superstars. One of them will be whoever chooses, or the first person to choose the tag team champions, Billy and Chuck. And the second pick that will contain 2 people is whoever chooses to pick Brock Lesnar, because we've decided that Paul Heyman will go with Brock Lesnar at this point because Brock had just broken in and Paul was that mouthpiece, that man who worked with him. And I just like that we've seen as history's progressed that Brock works best with Paul Heyman. At least until the last couple of years where Brock's managed to find his niche without Paul, even though Paul's still around in the background and we all know it. So, so that's where we're heading. That's where we're heading, Scott. That sounds like a lot.
It does, but I have a feeling that we're going to be going at I think the pace will be brisk when we get to the back end. Maybe some of these ones will be we'll be talking about our picks and why we took them. But I think when we get to the back end and we need to fill the roster, I think things will be a little bit easier. But I'm excited for this. I think we'll try to go at a good pace. We won't make the show too long. But we'll talk about why we picked who we picked and such, because I want to get into more on the back end of the show, our direction of our rosters. That's more the exciting thing I'm looking forward to listening to. So talking about. So let's do it. So the first thing we have to do, Dave. The first thing we have to do is one of us has to be Raw and one of us has to be SmackDown. Now, as you said, it's more important. The big thing about this is that the guy who gets SmackDown gets the first pick. So I have a coin in my hand. I'm a very honest man. I may be one of the few that you know, Dave. Maybe you do. So I'm going to flip this. Okay?
Yep.
You call it. The guy who wins the toss will get SmackDown and get the first pick. All right?
All right, then. All right, I'll call heads.
All right, heads. Flip, drop. Guess what? It is heads. So
it is heads.
See, I'm an honest man. So, Dave, you will be the general manager of SmackDown. I will be the general manager of Raw, and you get to pick first. So,
all right.
Let us go.
Let's get
started.
All right. Well, I am going to pick the number one draft pick in my mind. It may surprise a couple of people, but if I was looking at the roster, if I was wanting to build a roster around someone for the next few years, this is the person I want. I always believed he was never used to his full potential, and that is Kurt Angle. And I'm going to take Kurt Angle at number one.
Okay. I like that pick.
I think you can do a lot with Kurt. I think he's very versatile. We've seen that both comedy and serious natures. And I think that he can wrestle with just about anyone. And so, whoever you're bringing onto your roster, I think he can work with them all. So I think Kurt Angle is the man.
All right. Well, of course, Dave, to the surprise of absolutely no one, my number one pick is going to be this is so embarrassing. My number one pick is, of course, going to be our WWF, technically still, undisputed world champion. So, of course, my number one pick is Triple H. Because he's the world champion. Right now, he's a babyface. But we all know he might actually be a better asshole. So, he is incredibly flexible. And, I think he's a guy that I like at the top of my card. He is not burnt out because he just came. Had he not gotten hurt, I may not have picked him because there was a little fatigue with him by the time when he popped his quad by May the previous year, but he's back fresh. He had a hot Rumble. Yes, the storyline involving Lucy and the shampoo and all that other crap with Chris Jericho was not the best, and sadly their match at WrestleMania was completely forgotten because of the epic energy level that Rock and Hogan put forth at Skydome. But he is the number one guy for me. He is the world champion, so I'm going to take the belt, Dave, which puts you in. You actually have a little more flexibility because you will be able to create your own world champion. But I wanted to have the belt on hand for myself already, so I could work on some other things. So because of that, I'm almost drafting the belt as much as the guy, but it is Triple H, so duh. So Triple H is my number one pick.
Now I'm not completely surprised. I sort of thought you would grab him, but I thought there might have been one or two you might have considered beforehand. But I always thought he'd be quite high on your list. So and there's I think you've made some very, very fair points. I don't think that's just a fanboy perception either. I think you've made some fairly good points. And And as Scott alluded to, everyone, we know that the company ended up, while they only had the one world champion at this point, we know the direction ended up being each brand had its own world champion. And we're taking that attitude that each brand will have its own world champion and its own tag team champions. So it's okay. We will be incorporating that into our future booking thought process. But yeah, Triple H on Raw with the world title, and SmackDown will have to create a champion, whether they hand a belt over to someone or whether they run a tournament. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
All right, number 2 pick for SmackDown. Look, again, with the benefit of hindsight, I don't think I can overlook this person as number 2, or this person as number 2. I'm just going to come out and say who I'm grabbing, and I'll talk about my thought process. And that is, I'm going to grab Brock. I'm going to go Brock with Paul Heyman. And part of that is the benefit of hindsight. We know where Brock's career is going to go. We know what he brings to the table. We know how good he is and how good he has been for so long. And the opportunity to get Paul Heyman as well, I think, is something I couldn't pass up. Paul has become this is a conversation for maybe another show. But I think Paul Heyman potentially is up there now, rivaling Bobby the Brain as the greatest manager mouthpiece of all time. I really do. I think that he is so good on the stick. We know that Brock ended up going and leaving the company for a long period of time and going to UFC. And part of that was how I think we know the travel schedule, he struggled with it. Whether that can be managed before he goes and possibly be able to work with him to create a schedule that he's happy with. Maybe the opportunity to encourage him to go and try UFC while under contract with the company. That could lead to all sorts of different futures. But Brock he's an all-round guy. We know he's just outstanding in the ring, and he brings an intensity that few can match. So Brock's going at 2 in this draft.
I think that's an amazing pick. You're setting yourself up for what would end up being a great feud a year down the road. But obviously Brock is a guy that needs to be built. So that's a good pick. He's got the look, obviously. And you get an opportunity to really push him. You get an opportunity to really push him, and elevate him to another level, down the line. So I like that pick as well. My number 2 pick. I know it's a guy nobody likes, but this is a tough one. Since we know hindsight, I think I'm going to avoid him. But looking at this list, I am actually going to go with another elevated guy to put on my main event, and I am putting The Undertaker. I want to fortify my main event before I get to my mid-card, and they're the top 2 guys. Now, I was not happy as I just did my chrono watch. I was not happy with 2001 Undertaker. He was since he's done the badass gimmick, he's been a little lazy in the ring. He's not been the smoothest. His matches have been plodding, but he is a guy that he's a good heel right now. He could be a good counter to Triple H if Triple H stays a babyface. I know their matches are never the best, but I'd like to have a little name value for the cable brand. And you know what? Eventually, I could see him, maybe going back to his old gimmick, or maybe a hybrid. So I'm gonna take the Undertaker. The point is here, Dave, and I'm just gonna say this now because he's on this list. Since we know hindsight, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how you're thinking, but it is very hard for me to draft Chris Benoit.
I'm straight out. I couldn't do it.
I can't do it either. I was just about to. I was about to, but then I thought we did mention hindsight, and if we are going by hindsight, that's not a guy that I want on my roster because we all know what's about to happen. So I think it's safe for both of us if we just kind of expunge him. Yeah. So I decided to go with a valuable commodity for the second pick.
All right. Yeah, and look, I think it's a good pick, and again, the benefit we have, we know that. He got better from sort of 2002 through to 2010. I mean, we just saw how good he could be as he started facing varied opponents and different guys, and really honing his craft and bringing it in the ring as he modified his style. And I think that's a really good pick. And the legacy that he brings long term, the WrestleMania legacy that he brings, really, I think brings an added value beyond who he was in 2002. Similar to the way I saw Brock. I think he brings a bigger value that we don't always expect. So I think that's a good pick. All right. My 3 pick. I'm going to fly in the face of what I know things are going to happen for people. But we know he is available in 2002. I'm only going to get 12 months out of him. But I think if I manage as I said before, if I manage his booking better than Vince did in 2002, I think you can make the most of him for 12 months, and he's going to be the focal point for a little while because that's who he was, and that's Stone Cold. He was still the man. He is still the man in 2002. He hadn't been given the greatest WrestleMania slot due to the Hogan Rock situation, and the fact that we know that the story is the legend, the myth is that Austin did not want to work with Hogan at that time for probable fear of how that might turn out, or how that might be the outcome of that match might go. So he unfortunately had to wrestle Scott Hall. But outside of that, he was still the number one draw. He was still the guy who got the biggest reactions. He was still amazing on the mic. And his body was still holding it together just. And while his body's holding it together, I think he can bring eyeballs to the Smackdown brand. I think he's going to be the one that you can build the company around for 6 months as you then look to build your future. And maybe building a rivalry that we didn't necessarily get to see, but have it happen in the way it should have happened, could make for an interesting WrestleMania match in 2003. So Steve Austin's going number 3.
I do like that pick. You don't know what you're going to get, and obviously, if you utilize him better, he's a guy that I don't think he has to be in a main event feud or anything, but as long as he gets prime spot on your show and still draws, I think you're fine. I would be careful with his, like you said, you want to be careful with his, I don't want to say his ego, but you want to make sure that you're utilizing him and he's not just there for the sake of being there, which was the problem in the Prime universe. Using him to put guys over is one thing, but, obviously he would be more effective at a long-term build, which I think I trust you will definitely do. I like that pick. Dave. And plus, it's good with Brock, and I mean Brock obviously in Austin would be amazing, and maybe eventually sometime in the world we'll get that. But Brock and Kurt and Steve already had great chemistry, so that's good to have at the top of your card as well.
Yeah, and Steve brings. I mean, we know Kurt could talk, but both Kurt and Brock are there. They're your in-ring workers. Steve is the guy who can talk people into an arena. Is the charisma that he brings, the it factor. He just brings it. It's that alternate element to what Kurt and Brock bring into the company.
Exactly, I agree. So with my third pick, I'm actually going to start working on my youth movement. I'm going to take a guy that got crazy over in 01. He had a great feud with Regal. He built himself up throughout the invasion, and I think he's a guy that's incredibly valuable now and is definitely an up-and-comer. So my third pick is Edge. I think Edge is a guy who you could continue to use in the upper mid-card. Maybe you put him in some tags with main event guys, depending on who your babyface is. I think Edge could be a great heel. I mean, he was an awesome heel, in 2000 and early 01, but I think he would eventually be a good. I think he'd eventually be a good babyface main eventer. I could see him being a different kind of heel main eventer as we move along over the next few years. But for now, he'd be a solid upper mid-card guy, a guy that you could put in mid-show main events, and then little by little starts building himself up to the point where I could put a world title around his waist. I did it with, Triple H will eventually need time off or put in other feuds, and Edge is a guy that could eventually be that guy. So I think he is built perfectly and ready for that next level for the roster. When I have two solid guys like Triple H and Taker, I can afford to give Edge the time to continue growing without the invasion and all that other slop. So I'm very excited to have him on my roster because he's a guy who in a couple of years could end up being a main eventer.
I will admit you've caught me a little bit by surprise there. I wasn't anticipating Edge going this early. I think you've put some good rationale there behind it, though. There's a little bit of an element of drafting on potential of where we know he can go and what we know he can produce in the future, and giving him the opportunity to grow and develop that. I think that's a really good pick. It surprises me, but as I think about it, it is a really good pick, and you can do a lot with him. So, wow. All right then. Well, number 4 for SmackDown, and I'm going to pick a guy who, I'm just looking at this list here, I'm going to pick a guy who had already made his move into the upper card, but the versatility he brings, his ability to work with just about anyone, again, someone who can change his gimmick when needed, can redevelop himself and recreate himself over and over again, a guy who still to this day is a draw where he works, and that's Chris Jericho. I'm going to grab Jericho. I've always been a fan of Jericho. I think very highly of him. I don't get to see AEW. I don't watch AEW. I will admit that, except YouTube clips and sort of keep an eye on what happens. But I know that he can still go, and he could go back then. He'd just come off his world title run. He'd been elevated. I don't think they made the most of that elevation, but I think separating him from Hunter and Undertaker and having him there, I mean, realistically, you're looking at him as I've picked him, he's probably, the number 2, number 3 guy on the SmackDown brand that I've grabbed so far. Brock is still starting out, so Jericho has got that opportunity to maybe have a series with Kurt or have another series with Austin and still really be quite prominently featured right from the start. I think that's what he brings to the table. He can really be thrust straight into that main event spotlight. So I'm taking Jericho at 4.
I love that pick. He's fresh off his first major world title reign. In the same case as Triple H, he got kind of stuck having to follow the epic energy, historic energy level of Rock Hogan with their main event match, which in a bubble is really not that bad. But unfortunately, WrestleMania matches, when you watch them live, are never in a bubble. So you kind of have to, you somewhat suffer with that. But I like that pick because he's another guy like I have with Edge, who's kind of already, he's a guy that could, you could put in a main event slot and it'd be believable to people. So I like that pick, Dave. I like that pick a lot. And you could move him around, and it's pretty great. That's a great pick. This pick is not surprising, but I'm again thinking of my audience. And I know they miss this guy like crazy. And I'm going to talk to him when he gets to my roster and ask what his future is and how long he intends to stick around. I'm going to assume he is. So I'm picking him kind of high. This might be a risky pick, but for my 4th pick, I am taking the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Shawn is a different guy now, and obviously, I think he is in wrestling shape. I think he will definitely be in wrestling shape. And Shawn is a different Shawn now. I think he will have no problem putting guys over. I don't think he'll have a problem not being in the main event. But, every time he steps in the ring, you're going to get a minimum 3.5, 3 3/4 star match out of him, even if he's wrestling, a donut.
Yeah.
So I want to preserve him on my roster because he's a guy that's going to face all sorts of competition, and he's a crowd pleaser. And since he's not been, obviously, in a ring in 4 years, I can anticipate some exciting matches with whoever he faces whenever he faces them. So that is why I know I'm being very veteran heavy right now, but I also have to take the fact that I'm on the cable brand, so a lot of that's revenue and some ratings. So I'm taking the guys I know the crowds will definitely tune into, and a guy like Shawn, who again has not been on TV in 4 years, I think will be a huge benefit to the audience. And seeing him with fresh opponents, when he retired, we had guys like, we had a pretty piss poor mid card in 1998.
Yeah.
And I think he will look at this roster and go, oh, I'm going to have some fun. And with a couple of my next couple of picks, I think that's going to be very prevalent. So that's why I took Shawn Michaels, not because he's a DX guy and I love him and him and Triple H were great together. This goes beyond that. I want a guy that's going to help not only elevate wins and losses, but elevate for the future.
Yeah.
And that's the guy that I trust.
Absolutely. Look, I think that's a great pick. I was weighing up taking him when I took Jericho, and it was almost a toss of the coin in my head.
Right.
But I went with Jericho for the reasons of his ability to change and like the way he can play both face and heel. So I know Shawn can do it too, but we've seen once he comes back, he really is best suited as a babyface. But I think what you've got there is you've got a guy, like you said, he can elevate guys like no one else can, and never lose the luster of his own perception, his own image. And
right.
And bringing him back after 4 years, to have his first match on your brand for the first time in 4 years. I mean, whether it be the Triple H concept, whether it be bringing him in against as a teammate of someone, as a mentor, or in a hot feud, it's a ready-made. You just know the crowd are going to respond, and he's another guy that it's why I picked Steve Austin was because the crowd will always respond to him, and that's Sean. The crowd will always respond to Sean, and that's a good pick. I like that pick. So if you hadn't taken him, I was going to grab him next. So but it's interesting because what I was where I thought you were going to go, you've left one open for me to take now, which I'm very grateful for because I'm going to be sitting down and having a conversation with this person when he walks in the door. I'm going to be making sure that his head is now right, that he's got his life back on track, that the rehab that he's just completed has sorted him out. But again, a guy who probably similar to your pick for Edge, being picked for where I know he can go, for where I know his career has the potential. Not just we know he can produce in the ring already, but where his career can go is it's Eddie. I'm going to grab Eddie. I think we know that he rejoined the company just after the brand extension. He missed the draft, but he was back in the company within a few weeks, and so he just has that ability. He's got the ability to work with anyone. He's got the ability to bring the crowd in, and I think I'm looking forward to allowing Eddie to return to this company and develop that character that just got him over so well. The lie, cheat, steal character, the cheat to win. I think that character development will be so fun to watch. And I sort of hope that with a guy like Stone Cold still on the roster, I'd love to see Eddie and Stone Cold do some work together. So I'm going to grab Eddie. He's the gem ready to shine.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that I'm going to use the same philosophy that reasoning you gave me before. I actually was thinking of Eddie before I took Sean. That's a fantastic pick. I have a feeling Eddie is going to be in great shape. I think he realized the error of his ways. He realizes, listen, I'm not going to make it in any of these other promotions. He did a toe dip in WCW ECW at one point. I think he's fine. I think he's a guy who is a great heel, is a great face. He's fun, but damn, can he work? And I think he was pissed off that he missed a WrestleMania payday. And I think he realizes, man, this brand extension can open up so many avenues for me. Fantastic pick, Dave, because you can mold him into whatever you want. And him and Jericho on the roster. And if you remember, in the Prime universe, before he walked out, Eddie and Stone Cold had a little something brewing.
Yeah.
So here in our alternate universe, I task you to keep that up. Because I think Austin and Eddie would have fun back and forths. And I totally love that pick for you, because just like my Edge pick, you've got a nice mix there of some veteranship. You do have a lot of youth. I mean, Austin is the face of your brand right now, and then you've got a lot of youth: Kurt, Brock, Eddie, Jericho. So you're definitely going the real SmackDown route, and I'm kind of going the real Raw route. But that's okay.
We'll see if we stick with things. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking around here. My next pick, I am going to take someone. You know what? I'm going to take him now because he's another crowd pleaser, and he's a guy who I think will make things very fun, and he's another guy that the crowd is going to totally be in love with. So my fifth pick is Rey Mysterio. Even though Tajiri is a cruiserweight champion, let's be honest, Rey is the face. If you look at the history of cruiserweights, Dave, there's maybe only one name that comes even close to Rey Mysterio as the greatest cruiser of all time, and that's probably Jushin Liger. Yeah. I think Rey will be a ton of fun when I start drafting some more cruiserweights and start working some different things in the mid card. I love Rey Mysterio, and the Prime Universe Rey in 02 and 03 was so good. I think I'm going to do similar things with him. I need a good heel for him to go with. I don't have many at the moment, so I'm going to have to work on that as we work down the roster. But I love this pick because he's a guy that, again, the crowd will be very happy to see, and we start working him in some stuff. I think a criminally forgotten match or feud that may not have happened was Ray and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
I think we may have seen it once. I think it's a situation that needs to be rectified in our alternate universe. And again, he's a guy that brings a lot of excitement to the table. So that's why I took Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, I was just thinking that when you grabbed him, I was thinking how awesome it would be. You've got Ray and Shawn both hitting this brand at a similar time, both coming from not having been on television for a while. I'm just picturing the potential storyline there of whether they face each other or whether they work with each other as a team. I mean, that opens so many doors. Ray and Shawn together, I think, has a lot of potential, and I think that could really that would draw some really good ratings. I think people would tune in just to see that. So that's a great pick. That was, another one of those ones sitting there going, oh, if I can just get one more round, I've got him. And you sort of found the edge. But my next pick, it's I want to be careful that it does. We pick who we like. We're picking who we think would work well together. And I'm really, again, I'm tossing up between one of two guys, and I'm going to go with the guy who I feel, again, this is someone who, in my opinion, was never utilized as well as he could be in WWE. I think he had a lot more potential in him than Vince ever really allowed. He is versatile. He can work as a good guy or a bad guy. He can work with just about anyone. He brings a veteran element, and at the same time is still young enough to work for quite a long period of time. He's someone that I'm hoping will continue to keep himself clean of the bad stuff, but it's a guy who I think could be used in a multiple of roles, and that's William Regal. I've always been a massive fan of Regal. I think he is sensational, and I believe, like I said, I think he was criminally underutilized. I think he had especially after the brand extension, he's a guy who could have, as they started giving different guys a run in the main event picture, in the world title picture, he's a guy who never got given that opportunity. And I think he would have been outstanding. I think he would have made a great world champion at some point. One of the best to never hold a world title in the last 30 years, William Regal. That's my opinion. So I'm going to grab him now.
Tremendous. And I think that pick is good because mixing him up, I mean, him and Jericho work well together, and now you've got Eddie in there. Him and Austin are great. I think that's a great pick. Regal is very flexible. He could work anywhere. William Regal's the kind of guy, Dave, that I think you could legitimately give a world title reign to. The way you've got your roster,
and it would never be looked down on.
Absolutely not. And I think because you have such an open roster of talent, he fits everywhere. I kind of screwed him with my picks because he's kind of stuck, but that's why I think I sculpted it kind of this way. So I love that pick, and I love Regal. I'm bummed I lost him, but
and the other advantage is it brings a title. He was the European champion at that point. Whether I continue to keep that belt around, I don't know, but he brings a championship to my brand now. I actually have a belt.
Yes. Having said that, I'm going to take another belt because
the other one.
Exactly. This guy, obviously red hot out of the invasion, and he's another guy that a lot of people feel maybe should have snuck in a world title reign, but the invasion just didn't allow for it. But now we're back to being wide open. So my number 6 pick is our Intercontinental Champion, Mr. Monday Night, Rob Van Dam. Right now he's in his prime. He's been talked about so much. Again, I just watched on my chrono watch. I'm into December of 01. In fact, my next show that I'm watching is Vengeance. And I know people got pissed off at that show because he got beat up by The Undertaker, but I think they needed to get the hardcore belt off of him anyway. This is the moment where a guy like Rob Van Dam needs to shine. And again, I look at it again, Dave. I got another guy that the world would want to see face Shawn Michaels. I mean, to me, I'm trying to bring stuff that people have not seen ever. And now, the big thing about me, and going back to my couple picks ago, having Shawn Michaels on my roster, and now he's looking at the WWF roster going, holy crap, look at all these guys. Where did I get all this in 98? I had to deal with freaking bums like, I don't say Draws because he got paralyzed. But, I mean, look at it. I mean, obviously, we looked at the mid-card, the Truth Commission and, Jarrett and the, the fake Midnight Express. I mean, he had some, the mid-card in WWF in 1998 was pretty awful. But now Shawn looks at this roster, Dave, and is like, holy crap. Me and RVD, me and Ray, this kid Edge moving up the ranks. Holy shit. Look at this roster. So, and plus RVD is a guy that could easily upset anybody or just light the world on fire and become a future world champion. I feel like I sacrificed Regal by picking Ray, but I'm very comfortable putting RVD on my roster as a guy that easily, at this moment in 2002, is nuclear. So I'm really good with this pick, Dave.
All right, and that was, yeah, as I said, it was a toss up between two guys, Regal or RVD, and I went with Regal, and and you've grabbed RVD. I think they fit a very similar demographic at the time, a very demographic of worker. I mean, they're versatile. They can work both styles. They can work with a lot of different people. And they were, and as you said, RVD was probably at the peak of his powers at this point. No injuries hadn't really slowed him down. He'd been pretty lucky most of his career. He had a big injury in ECW, but since arriving in WWE, really was just on the up and up. So I think that's another good pick. Someone who can work with most of the roster. So, yeah, I like that one. Oh, where to now? I'm just having a look at my roster, and and I'm looking at who's left, and there are still some very, very big names on the roster that neither of us have gone to yet. And I'm just trying to work out whether I'm going to grab a big name or whether I'm going to grab. I'm going to grab one other guy that I think I need for my my upper mid card main event options. These are the guys, as you can see, most of the guys I've picked so far are guys that can work main event, would be good in a main event and have some versatility with them. And I'm going to do that for my next pick again. I'm going to grab Booker T. Again, another guy who's on the up and up in the company. We know what he can do in the ring. We know what he can do in the ring. We know that he can work with most guys. We know he has the potential to redevelop that character a couple of times. And I think 203 Booker really, that was probably the peak of his run with the company. I think his best ever run with the company from a character standpoint was the King Booker stuff in 05. But I think in-ring, 02, end of 02, 03, early 04 was probably the peak of his in-ring work with the company. So I've got a guy who just, again, brings something a little bit different and will be a good addition to my side of the roster.
That is a good pick for you because I keep looking at your upper card and I'm seeing a lot of youth. Again, Kurt is technically youth. It's only, we're only in his third year in the company. And Brock, obviously green. Jericho, veteran, but not not really in a main event status. And you have Eddie Regal. Booker is another guy like Sean and even like Ray, Edge, very versatile. You can put him in the mid card. You can put him in the main event. He could be a face. He could be a heel. I love that pick. And I think I think SmackDown's a good spot for him. I think he got kind of mishmashed on Raw during the invasion, and sticking him with Triple H and Taker and all them is a bad idea. So I think you are much better off having Booker T than I do. So I love that pick. What I love about your roster so far, Dave, is you've got so many guys that could be wildly cool world champions when you have your tournament, since I have the belt. No, I'm just kidding. I think you have an amazing tournament in your back pocket for your inaugural world title for SmackDown. You've got some crop there because Austin, obviously, it's just would be the automatic favorite because it's him. But you have all these other guys and, the Booker stuff with the fight in the supermarket, milk, it does a body good, is pretty great. So I love that pick. And Booker, again, is a guy that you could put everywhere. Face, heel, mid-card. He's a good guy to have a tag team with. So I love that pick, Dave. I love that pick. So I am going to, if I may, I think I'm allowed to do this if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take two guys and put together my first tag team. I know you have them listed individually. Tell me if I can do this. I'd like a fortified veteran tag team on my roster. So may I take the Hardys as a team?
Yes, right. That's allowed. They were a team, an active team at the time. That's allowed.
Okay. So I am going to take both Hardys, Matt and Jeff. Number one, because I need a tag team. I got to start building a tag division. Because neither of us have picked the champions yet, because I feel like we're at a moment where, as cool as Billy and Chuck are as tag team champions, I think we both know that they're not long for the title. So I wanted an established tag team, and I think having Matt and Jeff is great because they have established themselves as singles, so I could break them up if I need to, but I think they're a good, solid, grounded tag team to begin building my tag division with. And again, they're two guys that eventually could be split up and be their own guys. So they work well together. So I'm going to do that. So I am taking Matt and Jeff, the Hardy Boys, as a tag team and eventually individually.
Yeah, I like the rationale behind it. I think, like you said, they're a veteran team. They're probably the best team on the roster at the time. At a time when a lot of the tag teams were about to be split up, that's a good way to build your tag team element in your brand without having to start from scratch. So I like that pick. That's a good pick, and it hasn't gone beyond me that the tag team champions haven't been picked yet.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people there's a few guys there that that haven't been picked, and I think that's a good pick. That's a good pick. It's got me wondering now because there's a couple of guys that I do have my eye on, but I just need to. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna grab one of the guys who I'm surprised probably has got this far without being talked about yet. I'm going to go with perhaps a more established veteran now. certainly a star player. Again, someone who I know in hindsight, I might not get a long run out of this person, but I think with some of the young guys I've got on my roster and knowing in 2002 his willingness to maybe give back just a little bit at the time, I'm going to grab Hogan. I didn't think I'd end up picking him at all, but looking at who I've got, I think there are some opportunities to have the veteran, to have that old talent on my brand, especially with the potential dream matchup that we never got. I think I think if Mr. Austin sees that Hogan's willing to work with people and work with what's best for the company, I think the dream match of Austin Hogan that we didn't get could be a moneymaker for SmackDown. So I'm going to grab Hogan. What he did in that 02 run, from up until WrestleMania or just before WrestleMania, putting over Brock, putting over Kurt. He really did give back for a little while there, working with Edge. So I think what I can get out of him in this short-term period, and hopefully where I can build to, I might not have him for longer than a few months, but I think I can make use of him while I've got him.
He was an interesting guy to think about, because if in this universe, Dave, he is cooperative, I'd like to think he is. I didn't like him on my roster because I have too much of a mix of youth and athleticism. I feel like he'd have been out of place on Raw. I like him on SmackDown because I'd like to see someone like him and Regal. That'd be fun. But yeah, you've got the dream match that we didn't get in Toronto, which cracks me up because the weird thing about that is if Rock had beaten Hogan, I think we knew Austin would have probably beaten Hogan as well. So I don't get why he didn't go for the match. So as general manager, Mr. Hall, you have your work cut out for you in that aspect. But having said that, I mean, it is Hogan. He had a few bullets left in the gun, so you can get a few good things out of him, a few good matches out of him, and you needed a face for the con. And I think CW or My Nine or whoever the hell, whatever network. I feel like SmackDown's been on a zillion networks, so probably would be happy to have Hogan there, and he eventually does go to SmackDown. I'm not questioning your pick because I love you, Dave. You know that, but I am looking forward to. This is the first pick you've done where I'm looking forward to when we go to the end of our show and we kind of sculpt how the first few months would go on our brands. Excuse me, because I'm curious what you'll do with him. You think he's an easy guy to work with, and he's kind of not. Not from a personality or perspective. We're not going to be able to book that. That's not possible. But just like where he would fit with a guy like Jericho or a guy like, Kurt would be pretty funny. Hogan and Booker might be fun. I mean, they did have a little interaction in WCW, so I am very, very intrigued what I think your plan for him will be. So I'm glad you picked him. You had the guts to. I didn't. But I do think that you have got a very interesting situation with your roster, having Hogan there. I think he fit your roster better than he fit mine. So that's
and I'm looking at the roster. I think I agree with that. I think that we talk about the politics between Austin and Hogan and having to work that ego thing. But I look at who you've got sitting on your side, and Hogan having to work with, and we know how difficult it was with Hunter and Taker and Shawn. I think that would make it much harder for him to function on Raw. So, that's I think I've probably got a Hogan that might be a bit more open because there'll be less politics backstage on my side.
I agree with you. All right. My next pick. My next pick. Oh boy. I'm a little torn here. I'm torn between two people, but I'm going to go for it. Even though she's not the women's champion, I think I want her right now because she is probably the most popular woman on the roster, and that is Trish Stratus. Jazz is champion, yes. She's also a heel. So Trish Stratus is beloved by the company. I eventually will probably turn her heel. She's an awesome heel. I am very excited for what I can get out of Trish Stratus and the Stratus faction I will have. Yeah, I'm torn now because I'm trying to build my mid card, but I don't want to go too crazy with the mid card and have too many guys that may not be worthy of it. So I think I'll just take who I think is the hottest woman in the company roster, and see where I can take her with some other women on the roster. So I'm taking Trish Stratus. You're probably perplexed.
No, not at all. I think that's I think it's a good move. It's like you said, she's the most popular on the roster, and we know how good she becomes in the ring. We know how well she develops, and we neither of us have really fleshed out anything outside of probably a main event upper mid card roster. So to throw out the consideration that there's going to be some women working on Raw, I think that's a good step. Whether both sides, I don't know whether we'll see both brands working a women's roster. Maybe a women's revolution comes early, or what. But I think Trish is a good pick at the time. Like you said, she's most popular on the roster, and she continues to grow and develop over the next few years. So she's got a big upside to her. So that's not a bad pick at all.
Okay.
So my next pick, I'm going to take a similar attitude to what you took with when you picked the Hardys. Okay, I'm going to pick a tag team. I'm going to pick an established tag team, but I'm picking the tag team more for what I want in the future rather than what I want them for now. I'm going to grab the Dudleys. And again, I'm going to need a tag team element to my roster. So there's an established team that can be used at this point to just get that started and get that growing. But I wanted Bubba. I want Bubba on my roster long term because what I believe he did in TNA in the Bully Ray character, I would love to see that developed and for the first time in the WWE banner, because I think if Bubba went solo in WWE and developed that character on his own, I think we would have seen money made. I think Bubba became a very good in-ring worker, not the greatest, but good enough. And that Bully Ray character I've always enjoyed. Again, I don't get TNA down here, but I've seen a lot of it on YouTube and various video clips and stuff like that. So I want the Dudleys for the stability they can bring to a tag team division in the immediate moment, but because it gives me Bubba Ray to work on and grow in the future.
I love that pick. Same kind of reason that I have with the Hardys. I think they could be solid in your tag division, and then eventually you could break them up, and Devon could find religion like he did in the Prime Universe. And Bubba Ray was just kind of left floundering on Raw without any real direction. But you make him into the Bully Ray that we know now, and I think you might have some gold there. He'd be a good heel. Kind of like the character that a certain guy that has not been drafted yet does eventually become within the next couple of years. My next pick, I'm going to take a guy who also a lot of variety. You can put him anywhere on the roster. He'll work well with the main event guys because I'm doing you a favor because I think he would clog up your top of the card. I'm going to take the Big Show. I think the Big Show is a guy you could have as a face, you could have as a heel, mid card, main event, another guy that kind of floats around. He's funny, he's good on the mic. I might give him a little bit of comedy. He's a guy that could fit anywhere at any time. So I know he's not everybody's favorite, but he's a guy that I think I can kind of work with to be funny, be good in the ring as a big guy, kind of maybe keep the weight off, and make him something special, both in the mid card and in the main event. So I'm going to take the Big Show. I think he fits. This is another case where I think I'm doing you a favor, Dave, because I think he fits my roster probably a little better than yours.
Well, I'll admit,
that's just my opinion. You may disagree. Maybe he does fit your roster.
Look, I'll admit, when I grabbed Hogan, I was tossing up whether to take Big Show, and I went for probably the star power over the Big Show. But I think your reasoning is very good. I think he probably does fit a little bit more with the roster that you're building. It would have been interesting. I was interested to see the role of a giant on my roster, but it's no, I like that. That's a good one, and yeah. So okay, yeah. All right. So now we're starting to get into some nitty gritty stuff, and who do we want and where do we want to go, and I feel that my picks are flashing more and more my bias in terms of the type of workers, the type of wrestlers that I like, how they work in the ring and what they bring. And I think you can also see the element of bias I'm giving to guys that I know we've seen have developed so well over the years that might not have been at that point in 2002. But with my next pick, I'm going to take Christian. Again, he's another guy that I have always liked. In fact, I prefer Christian to Edge. I've always preferred Christian to Edge, and I think the work that he did when he came back to the company in 2010, 2011, especially the 2011 work with Randy Orton, Christian is awesome. He's proved that he can talk. He's proved that he can work with a lot of different guys. And I think he has an upside to him in 2002 of that untapped potential again. And you can sort of see that's a big thing that's come up in a lot of my picks. The untapped potential, the Eddies, the William Regals, the Booker T's, the Christians, guys that really can work main event and be top level guys, but maybe never got that opportunity in the best way in WWE. And I know Eddie gets there, but I think, you can see a bit of a pattern there with some of my picks. But I'm not gonna shy away from it. I'm taking Christian.
Dave, I'm not gonna lie to you. You're not the only person I know who actually likes Christian better than Edge. Dr. G has always said that he likes Christian better than Edge too. So that is not you're not. You're probably in the minority. Maybe you're not. I don't know. That's a debate for another day. But that's a good pick because Christian's a guy that you can elevate. He's the kind of guy like Edge I have, or an RVD even, or a Ray that you could build up to to another level as a main eventer. Good on the mic, solid worker, great worker. If you have a cruiser division, depending on who gets the cruiserweight champion, who's still out there, he's a good guy you could kind of start with and then, translate to other stuff with him. That's a good pick. I like that pick, Dave. All right. Well, no, I'm not going to take him. I know who I'm going to take. I like this guy. I think he's a good mid-carder, and I think he's a kind of like William Regal in the sense that he's a solid mid-card guy that's great in the ring. You could put him with tag teams. And that is Lance Storm. Lance Storm is one of those likable guys who is funny. He's a good heel. He's a good face. Better heel, if I could be serious for a moment. Yeah, I totally think that I could fit him in the right spot in my main roster. You might think that's kind of a nuts pick, but I'm trying to kind of flesh my mid card out a little bit, so I'm going to go with Lance Storm.
I know. Look, I think like you said, and I think it's the similar direction where I'm going. As a guy who the booking that he was given never allowed him to really get as far in the WWE as he could. I think we saw in both ECW and WCW that he had talent to rise up. Sadly, WWE didn't use him best, and I actually watched the boring the Steve Austin labeling Lance Storm boring and the going to sleep element. I watched those promos the other day, and they didn't. Yeah, I just felt it wasn't doing the best by Lance Storm, and I think
right.
If you work him better, you can get a lot further with him. So right. Yeah. All right, just for our listeners' benefit, we're going to cap the main event, the main roster numbers at 20 just for the purpose of this, and then so we can move through. So for my next pick, I am going to help that along by picking two guys. I'm going to take the tag champs. They haven't been taken by now, but I'm going to take the tag champs because I'm going to utilize them as building my tag roster and starting to get that side of my mid card going. So, look, they're the tag champs. They might not last long in that role, and they may not last long as a team. But Billy Gunn still had something to offer, and we saw that over time. Chuck Palumbo, there's still raw, still developing, and could be rebuilt and reutilized once that tag team breaks down. So, but more that I want those tag titles now. So Billy and Chuck are coming to SmackDown.
That's a great pick. You have the tag team champions, which means I'm going to have to create my own belt, which I'm kind of cool about. And I'm looking forward to creating my own titles because I'm a nerd like that. Good pick, though. And, those guys you could probably break up and do other things with, too. Although Billy Gunn probably is just better off being a tag wrestler. And Chuck Palumbo, yeah, you never know. Chuck, you can make into anything. So I like that pick. I like that pick. All right. I am going to go with... I'm not taking both these guys because I think their time as a tag team is up. So I'm going to take one guy now, and that is Bradshaw. Again, a guy that could be a good face and a good heel. He's a big dude. I think he is the more marketable as a solo guy. He's also younger. Maybe I'll grab Farouk on the back end to just keep the APA together. But I think the other reason is because, again, he will eventually become probably a great heel world champion. He could probably be a pretty good babyface world champion too, but he's just a solid guy to put on the roster and be good at a lot of things. Bullying heel, funny babyface hanging out in his own little office. I'm pretty comfortable with that pick. And, eventually he could probably clean himself up a little bit.
Maybe wear a suit.
Exactly.
That's a good pick. No, that's a good pick. I think that's a good pick with a lot of potential. I like that one. I was starting to eye him off as well. I think he was coming up on the next round or two for me. So you've beat me to it. Looking at guys that I think I'm just trying to bring a little bit of difference now. I'm going to try and bring a little bit of difference now to my roster. This might surprise some people. Maybe not quite there in 02, but again, someone who I think showed later down the track that he can bring a lot, and it brings a variety, brings a different element to my brand, which I don't have at the moment, and that's Mark Henry. I'm going to grab Mark Henry. World's strongest man. It gives me that big guy, that bully sort of guy that can be utilized. We know that when he runs that sort of world's strongest man and the Hall of Pain character a few years later, that it really came together for him. So I'm sort of hoping that I can work with Mark Henry to bring some of those elements out in his character a little bit earlier. And again, like I said, it brings something different, brings a bit of strength and size to my roster, which I don't really have. So I'm going to grab Mark Henry.
He's a Haas, and I don't think you have a ton of Haas's on your roster. I like the Mark Henry Hulk Hogan thing. That could be fun. Yeah, that's a solid pick. Kind of like me with Bradshaw, big meat slapper there that you could put in any situation. And grow either as a heel or as a face. Because that's what right now we need to do, Dave, is looking ahead. We need that kind of variety. Baby faces, heels, where can these guys go? In the future. Can they be flexible? Will they work out being flexible? That kind of thing. So I like that pick. That Mark Henry pick is similar to my Bradshaw pick. I think it's a guy that you could put in any situation and hopefully thrive. Hopefully thrive. Let me think. I'm almost tempted to start dipping into the OVW pool, but I think I'm going to wait. I'm going to take... You know what? I'm going to take this guy because I want to build up my cruiserweight division, and I love this guy, which means I probably have to draft his at-the-time girlfriend. But I'm going to take Kidman. I love Billy Kidman. I think he's a guy that I can really work with and maybe start growing some type of personality with. And he's just a good, solid cruiserweight guy. And since the cruiserweight champion still has not been drafted, I already got a couple of guys that I could play around with in the cruiserweight division. I think Billy Kidman be a good pick. There may be better cruisers still sitting there, but I almost said Pillman. He was at one point. I think Kidman is a guy that I could put in there in the mid card, put on great matches, maybe kind of make my show like a Nitro where he opens, he's the first match after the opening promo. So yeah, I'm going to take Billy Kidman. You might be surprised by that pick, but I want to really build the cruiser division.
I think I'm more surprised with the fact that with Ray on your roster that Kidman made it this far. I must admit, I thought he might have gone a little bit earlier. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm just having a look now at where we want to go. I'm again just sort of starting to bring some variety to my roster. I'm going to grab the Hurricane. I always enjoyed the Hurricane's character. Helms is fun. You have the humor that he can bring in the role, and at the same time, it brings a light heavyweight element to my brand. Flies around a little bit more, so he can work with some of those guys, but he can be a good guy to be tossed around by a Mark Henry or a Brock as well. So I'm going to take the Hurricane.
Well, he'll give you some fun promos. He'll give you fun promos anyway. He'll give you some good backstage levity, but on top of that, he'll give you good matches because he's just good at that. So I like that pick. Well, she's still sitting there. Screw it. They had a feud going on. I might as well take her. I'm going to add another title to my roster, and I'm going to draft Jazz. She's women's champion. I need somebody to feud with Trish Stratus. I need to make Trish Stratus one of the centerpieces of my roster, so I pretty much should need to have the women's championship on my roster. So I'm going to take Jazz.
All right, yeah, and that's fair enough. That's not a bad pick. Well, I'm gonna take it from you. I think having just liked the idea of grabbing the Hurricane, I'm gonna take the Cruiser belt, and I'm gonna grab Tajiri.
Okay.
I don't want to be a one trick pony with just sort of that the working class. I want these guys who can all just work the style. And so bringing in the cruisers, I think will help out.
I think you're absolutely right. And this means that I have to actually keep a belt on my roster. So I actually have to do this, even though it's silly, but unfortunately he's already technically still has the light heavyweight belt at this point. So I'm going to have to take X-Pac with my pick here because I got to make sure I have a light heavyweight belt. So if you're going to have the cruiserweight title on SmackDown, then I'm going to have the light heavyweight title on Raw. As a matter of fact, I'm going to mark it with LH on our roster because he technically had that belt until the summertime. So probably the first time we've drafted two champions in the same in the same round. But I think I got to do that since you took the Cruiser champion, which made total sense. So so there we go. I didn't want to have to waste a pick on X-Pac, but you beat me to Tajiri. So
yeah. All right. Well, my next pick is a guy who I'm gonna grab him because he can work in my cruiser with my cruisers. So he fits the cruiser division. But more importantly, he'll be working with his nephew, and that's Chavo Guerrero. I think it just opens up a couple of different options for me. He can work in the cruiser division, be a challenger for Tajiri quite quickly. But at the same time, with Eddie returning, the Los Guerreros tag team is too good to pass up for your tag team division. So I think that will be something that will really bring it out. It's got a little thought blown on my head of how Eddie and Chavo going up against the Dudleys, maybe down the track for the tag title, could bring about the Bully Ray character. So I gonna grab Chavo.
That's a good pick. I like that. Well, it makes sense because you have Eddie, so it would be stupid for us to split them up. So good pick. All right, I'm gonna do this for the first time. I'll do it first. Time for me to. I think if I go too long, I'm gonna lose him. I need to have my voice of the night. So with this pick, I'm gonna take the voice of Raw, good old JR, Jim Ross, because I need a voice of Raw before you take him, and I'm stuck with Michael Cole. So so I am going to take Jim Ross with this pick because I might as well take it now that I need my voice of the roster, my voice of the show.
Yep, and that move is going to have to force my hand because I don't want to get stuck with Jerry, so I'm going to take Taz.
Good call.
And essentially keep the Smackdown and Raw commentary teams what they were is where I think we're going to head there.
Yeah, and I'll just say it now. I'll just take Jerry with the next pick, just so they're together, because that would make more sense.
And then, well, just in the interest of fairness, I'll grab Cole.
Okay. And listen, Cole and Taz, 0203, pretty fun.
Good. They were.
Yeah, both broadcast teams were in their prime in this 02, as we are drafting right now in 2002. So I think we're in good shape there. All right, I am going to draft. How many picks do we have left? Let me see. Just to make sure that we're at, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 16. We got what? 4 picks left.
Well, we'll make it 3 more. We'll do 3 more rounds after. So, because I'm obviously the first half of the round, so 3 more rounds after this pick. We'll just draw the line there.
Okay,
there we go.
Okay,
for the main roster, and then we'll
right.
grab a couple of OVWs.
Yeah. Then I am going to take. You know what? He fits better on my roster, and I'm going to do what I wanted to do in real life, in my alternate universe, what they didn't do in real life. So, he's going to have a good run for a little while as a wrestler. I'll at least have him for a few years. So I am going to take my guy, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, because eventually I'm going to have Flair become world champion because that's just what I do. So, we talked about it on our Flair episode that I would love to have seen that happen. We thought we were going to kind of get it, if I remember correctly, at WrestleMania 22, I think it was, when he almost won, when we thought he was going to win Money in the Bank. Screw it, I'm doing it now. So, and he fits. I think he fits perfectly well with my roster of guys. He loves Triple H. I don't think he wants to work with Hogan. And I could see him wrestling guys like Edge, and I could see him wrestling guys like RV. Well, I don't know. I could see him wrestling RVD. Why not? I could see him wrestling anybody on the roster and making them look pretty good.
All right. Well, I am going to pick I'm going to get my GM. I'm going to grab my authority figure. There's a couple of options there that you could utilize as the authority figure, but I am going to grab Easy E. I'm going to bring Eric in as the SmackDown GM. For no other reason than I think he's the better option. Well, for 2 reasons. One, he's the better option, and 2, a storyline that's brewing in my head for where I want to go. I think he would be perfect to bring it about. So I'm taking Eric Bischoff as my GM.
All right. I'm okay with that because I think that Cable would be more suited for large-boobed, short-skirted Stephanie McMahon. So she could look a little more. She could do her whole showing off her legs thing on Raw than on SmackDown. So, and Stephanie really wasn't a bad GM, and I think with Raw she'll be. I'd like to see her interact with Shawn and Undertaker and, well, obviously Triple H. I think it'd be pretty funny. So
absolutely.
So I think that's who I'll take. So we'll just flip flop GMs from real life. Yeah. I think I like Bischoff kind of being the guy working with the Jerichos and the Eddies and the Regals and the Kurtz. I think that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to seeing you do that. I think that'll be pretty fun.
All right. With just 2 rounds to go, and obviously we're leaving a lot of guys out there for now, and we would draft a full thing if we wanted to, but we're not. We're just looking at where we're going at the moment. I'm going to grab a guy that, again, this is a personal favorite. This is a guy that I like, that I would have loved to have seen him used a bit more of at this time period, and I think he got hard done by a bad management decision. I'm going to take Mr. Perfect. Perfect in 2002 had come back so strong and had proven that he could still go. And then the whole play Ryan from hell bit him in the butt. I'm not going to let him. I'm not going to let him make some poor choices on an airplane. But I would love the thought of Perfect and Brock and Perfect and Kurt going in the ring. So Mr. Perfect is on SmackDown.
Yeah, I was gonna pick. You picked a good spot because I was gonna pick Kurt that Kurt, like 4 or 5 picks ago, but I thought that would have been. I think I would have. I think. I won't say wasted a pick, but I probably thought he'd be sticking around a little longer. So I've been avoiding him, but that's a good pick for you. I like that pick. Because I think Perfect was in his prime, and since you already have to satiate multiple egos on your roster already, why not just put one more 80s guy on there to help you out? So, I think you know what? He's hanging out there. I could use him for some one shots, and he did stick around for a while. Screw it, I will take The Rock. He's gonna eventually have to show up at some point, and I think we can see some fascinating matches out of him with some of these different guys on this roster.
Possibly the Mania match we never got against the world champion.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah. Since you have Austin, I figure I should have the other face of the Attitude Era. So.
And to be honest, I was very surprised that he lasted this long. But I think part of that is because, and maybe you realize this, I'd sort of built a roster that I probably couldn't afford to have The Rock on there as well. With Austin and Hogan and Heyman, I sort of thought I really can't. It'd be to take The Rock would just be too much. Someone's going to get outshone, and it's not going to be The Rock. I'd sort of already made my calls of who I was going to run with, and I think that sort of meant that Rock was always going to end up on your side of things. So
right.
I think it's like sort of the value pick there more than anything. And you just need to tell him why you got picked so late. My last pick overall here in this side before we hit the OVW guys. I'm just going to add another guy to my light heavyweight division. Just to flesh that out a little bit more, I'm going to grab Jamie Noble. I loved the Jamie Noble character when it came on. The redneck, he was a really good character, and he works well in the light heavyweight division. So he fleshes out my cruiser division, a bit more, and allows me to just have a few options there.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like Jamie Noble too. And I don't know if we have her on the roster here. Well, you should probably take Nydia because they worked well together. My last pick. Notice I didn't take either other member of the NWO, nor will I. Well, you know what? She's pretty hot, and she's Kidman's girlfriend at the time, so I might as well end with Tori Wilson because she could be in a good storyline with him as a valet. She wrestled a little bit, so I think she could be. I think she could be valuable for my Raw roster in terms of entertainment value and maybe a match here and there.
All right. So there we go. So just before we move on, let's just run this down. I'll run down who I've got here, and then Scott, you can run down Raw. But on SmackDown, I've grabbed Kurt Angle. I've grabbed Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, William Regal, Booker T, Hulk Hogan, the Dudley Boys, Christian, Billy and Chuck as the tag team champions, Mark Henry, Hurricane, the Cruiserweight champion Tajiri, Chavo, Michael Cole and Taz are my commentators, Eric Bischoff is my GM, and Mr. Perfect and Jamie Noble round out my drafted rounds.
All right. And for my Raw roster, I have, from top to bottom, Triple H as my world champion, Undertaker, Edge, Shawn Michaels, Rey Mysterio, Rob Van Dam, who at the time is Intercontinental Champion, the Hardys, Jeff and Matt, who could be split up, Trish Stratus, The Big Show, Lance Storm, Bradshaw, Billy Kidman, Jazz, X-Pac, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, my broadcast team, Ric Flair, Stephanie McMahon is my general manager, The Rock, and Tori Wilson. So, there we go.
I think we've both got nice variations there and a good, well-rounded. I think each of us have got some good, well-rounded rosters, and it'll be fun to see where we're gonna take it in a few minutes. But we're just gonna draft. We're gonna jump in there. A bunch of OVW guys. We talked about this at the beginning. OVW. We had a lot of guys called up from OVW in the space of 8 to 9 months from just after the draft through to the following year's WrestleMania. So we've put them all on the list as well, and we're only going to draft 3 or 4 of them. Again, these are guys that are going to get called up and probably used in the early stages. With the benefit of the first pick, I get the first option, and we've got a clear three people to choose from as the options here. But I'm going to take the guy that I want, and I want Batista.
Son of a bitch.
Always preferred Batista over Cena. I've shared my thoughts on what happened in an earlier episode. You can go back and listen to our earlier episodes. I talked about how I thought Batista got hard done by when they did the switch with John Cena after they both won the world titles. I think Batista was more over than Cena at that point. I'm going to grab him.
Oh, you son of a bitch. Damn. Because I wanted him perfectly with my guys. You're killing me. All right, well, believe it or not, you may end up getting him anyway because I need a guy that's going to fit my roster. And believe it or not, he doesn't fit my roster at the moment. So I am going to take, obviously, Randy Orton. I just don't think the 2002 John Cena would fit my roster at the moment. So I think Randy Orton will be a better heel. He has that kind of thing about him. I like the way he worked in OVW. So I'm comfortable with bringing up Randy Orton to be a guy with Flair and Triple H, because your guy would have fit better, Dave. But because I could be honest with you, I love Batista too. I love Batista more than Cena too. I love Cena, but just I've always been a bigger. It's pretty comfortable to say I've always been a bigger Batista guy. So but you beat me to him. So I'm going to take Randy Orton. That still leaves him sitting up there, Dave. So you're getting a chance. You're getting teed up anyway. But I think for my purposes, in terms of elevation, right now, Orton is a better fit for my roster.
All right. Well, I'm going to test whether or not you truly see him as a fit for your roster, because I'm not going to pick Cena. I am actually going to pick a tag team, and that's my 3 guys. So I'm only going to have 2 picks. So you'll literally get 2 picks on top of each other. But I'm going to take Shelton, Benjamin, and Charlie Haas.
The world's greatest tag team.
I want the tag team.
Good pick.
With the little tag team roster that I've got, and what I feel is this little underlying shoot amateur wrestler unit when I've got with Kurt and Brock and Kurt and Perfect and William Regal and guys that just have that true nature to them. I think Shelton and Charlie fit my roster better than Cena does. I've got a couple of talkers in my roster. I think Cena will go missing in action. So I've taken the tag team of Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas. I'm gifting you John Cena if you want to take him. Otherwise, maybe he stays in developmental a little bit longer.
Wow. You know what? He is. Because I'm going to take a tag team as well. I'm going to take from your Eric Bischoff pick. I'm going to take Rosie and Jamal. I'm going to take 3-minute warning.
Nice.
I want another tag team. And they could be immediate. I don't think with the way our rosters are right now, it would not hurt for John Cena to stick around down there a little bit longer. So,
and the potential character development.
What's that?
The potential character development that they bring as well with their later runs, especially Jamal becoming Umaga, that opens up a lot of doors for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so Cena, gets his chance. He'll be all right. He'll be all right. And I think they add to my tag division. So I could see them coming in and beating the hell out of the Hardys and them having a feud together. I could totally see that happening. So,
I understand that, and this is no slight on John Cena. I just think it's a reflection of who we like and what we want to round out our rosters. If we had more picks, we would obviously he would go next for one of us. I think that would be a given. But I think we're just looking at where we're wanting to go with some storylines, and that's where I think we're going to head now. We're going to head into just a few minutes, just looking at what we would do with our rosters and with our company, with our brand, and what are we looking at building. And so I'll kick things off here, and having to build a world title, I think the best way to do that would be to run a tournament. And so I would be setting up a tournament very early. Eric Bischoff will be announced as the general manager, probably second or third week of the show. After the split, and he's going to come in and he's clearly going to announce that we need a world champion crowned. With Triple H being on Raw, he's going to book a tournament, and the tournament's going to have most of the key players. Angle and Austin will both be in it. Not Lesnar, so Angle and Austin will both be in it. Jericho, Regal, Booker, Hogan, and I'm going to build this tournament to result in a tournament final of Kurt Angle and William Regal. We'll sort of round out. Kurt Angle is going to win the tournament final, but both Austin and Hogan are going to be eliminated through nefarious means. Most likely, Eric Bischoff's involvement. He's going to set something up that's going to result in both Austin and Hogan being eliminated from that tournament in the early rounds. And Kurt Angle's going to come out as my world champion to start with. And he'll probably go on a series of matches against all sorts of different guys. I don't think I see him in a feud to start with. I'm going to have him wrestle guys like Eddie, like maybe a rematch with Regal, maybe build to a SummerSlam match with Chris Jericho for the world title. That's sort of going to be the SmackDown world title picture, because underlying that is going to be the build to SummerSlam, which is going to be the dream match we didn't get at Mania. And that's when Eric Bischoff is going to force the hands of both Hogan and Austin, and he's going to put them in the ring against each other, both as baby faces, knowing that Hogan's already been cheated and turned, so we can't do anything about it. But I want to get that dream match in and done. So Bischoff is going to book it, and Austin and Hogan will face each other in the main event of SummerSlam. So that's where my upper card is going to be heading in the early months. What's in store for us over on Raw, Scott?
Well, Triple H is going to go on a tear, beat everybody, and no, I'm just kidding. No, so
just what happened in real life.
Exactly. Well, why ruin a good thing? No. Well, I think first off, Stephanie McMahon will come out there and try to prove that she is not over her head. And they're gonna I think the heels are gonna be like Taker and be like, we should have Bischoff. He knows what he's doing. Why do we have her here? Just because she's Vince's daughter. I'm getting tired of this, nepotism crap. And I think Stephanie's gonna try to prove to herself and to the roster and to the fans that she can run this roster of epic powerhouses. So I think Triple H will continue. There'll be I think he's going to feud with Taker out of the gate as a babyface. Taker will be a heel. They'll wrestle for a couple of pay-per-views. Meanwhile, we are going to get a tournament to decide a number one contender for SummerSlam on my roster, and I think that does not change from real life. It will be Triple H and Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam in Long Island for the WWE Championship, and it'll be won by Shawn Michaels. So Shawn will become world champion. I think Triple H will eventually turn heel, but I think Shawn will pivot, and Shawn will walk into after a couple of title defenses against, certain people, he'll rematch with Triple H. Triple H will then turn heel. I think Shawn will wrestle, say, Big Show at No Mercy. And then we have the Elimination Chamber at Madison Square Garden for Shawn's World Championship. And that is the night that Rob Van Dam grabs the brass ring. And at Madison Square Garden, RVD will win his first World Championship.
Nice.
And
nice.
The mid-card will continue to grow. Bradshaw will move up, and I think I will give him the JBL character. My goal is to have, at WrestleMania, since I can't have Shawn and Jericho, because although, Dave, you and I can discuss what our mixed roster matches will be. If you have Jericho, I would like to have Shawn and Jericho. But if you have Jericho planned for something else at WrestleMania 19, that is where we get the match that we've never seen, and that is Shawn and The Rock.
Oh, that'd be good.
And I think I would have Rey Mysterio win the Royal Rumble. RVD would still be champion, and we would have RVD and Rey at WrestleMania.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Well, we might have to have a conversation about the winning of the Rumble thing because after Austin and Hogan face each other at SummerSlam and Austin is going over, that match will have been a number one contenders match. And Austin is then going to go on and take the title from Kurt at No Mercy or something like that, maybe even Survivor Series. But and Austin is going to hold the title through to Mania. Because what I'm going to have happening underneath is I'm going to have Brock Lesnar continuing to grow his legend. He's going to be beating guys left and right, probably almost building up that undefeated element to it. Probably having beat some of those veteran guys like a Mr. Perfect to get that ball rolling. And then start working through Eddie and William Regal and Booker and Jericho and working through those guys. And I think Brock's going to be, to me, Brock's the one who I'd be wanting to put over at the Royal Rumble because I want to build to that Brock versus Steve Austin match. And Austin, knowing that he will be leaving the company after WrestleMania, knowing that his health has hit the point where he's got to give it away, he wants to use WrestleMania to truly pass the torch and pass it in a meaningful manner. And his plan being that he wants to drop the belt to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania to give Brock his first world title, and to Austin heading off into the sunset, but not as happened, not telling anyone that he was going to retire, just letting it be the case. So that's the other dream match that I think we will be getting on the SmackDown side of things would be Austin and Brock.
Oh God, that's awesome. That is awesome. So we could have. So our double main event, neither of which, well, yours would be a title match. And it works perfectly, too, because I have no problem having Ray and RVD in the middle of the card. I wouldn't want them to have to end the show and have Austin Hogan in the middle or Austin Brock in the middle and then something bad happen. So I am perfectly fine at that moment acquiescing to giving you the main event of WrestleMania. Brock winning the Rumble is fine. And I could do like a number one contenders or something of that nature. It's fine. Stephanie has no problem with that. However, by the time we get to March of 2003, we may end up redrafting. So who knows? Who knows? But my goal then is to eventually have RVD drop the title to Edge. Because I think by 2003, if he doesn't get hurt, I think I may make Edge a heel.
Yeah.
I will merge, X-Pac will eventually kind of fade. I'll work on a new light heavyweight champion, perhaps Lance Storm or Kidman. I may have to pool myself some talent if The Rock decides to leave. You may have to do the same thing for Stone Cold, and who knows what you'll do for Hogan. Would you consider still doing, since you have him on your roster, and I know we kind of didn't say we draft him as talent, but would you consider still doing Hogan Vince at WrestleMania?
Look, it's certainly a real possibility. I think, you'd head down that way. Perhaps, yeah, look, I think that would probably be the best way because, I don't want Hogan taking up those main spots. So I think a Hogan Vince WrestleMania match would be a good way to go and allow Hogan to get another WrestleMania payday and again, probably one of those last moments in the sun before you're going to encourage him to head off into the sunset.
Right. Yeah.
Because under your main event, I really want to be building up my mid card guys. I really want guys like Christian and Regal and Booker to really be getting built up as future players. And the other ones that I'm wanting to see built up are Eddie. It would be Eddie, but probably utilizing the tag team division to do it. Like what happened. I'd probably have the Dudleys grab those belts pretty quickly. Probably the first event that you can. The Dudleys will take the titles after drafting. And then with Eddie on the roster, I'll bring Chavo in, and so I think the Dudleys will probably start as the baby faces, and Eddie and Chavo will develop the cheat to win characters that they did, the Los Guerrero tag team, and we build into a lovely little feud with the idea being that Eddie and Chavo take the titles through cheating, and they're going to start to be getting cheered as they develop those characters, and then the Dudleys can't win the rematch, and this is what will be the catalyst for Bubba turning heel and becoming Bully Ray. And then I think I'd really love to see Bully Ray and Eddie have a couple of matches there, allowing people, and we'll probably start to, as we heading into sort of post Mania in 03. That's where we'll start to push Eddie, and I think we'd head towards that Eddie Brock match that would be where you'd elevate Eddie and give him the chance to take the title when you decide to get it off Brock.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, my goal obviously is to also elevate Trish Stratus as the face of my women's division. As much as I love Jazz, she'll be champ for a little bit longer. And then maybe I work on getting some other, female talent. Obviously, throughout 02 and into 03, when Triple H does turn heel, I will still have some sort of evolution, so I'm glad I have Orton there. Since you have Batista, I may end up having to take Jindrak and have the original evolution. See how that goes. that may go well, may not go well. We'll see. I may have to work on that. But my definite goal is to elevate RVD into as a main player, as a main player for the company, and particularly on my roster. So my goal is to eventually bring RVD to that level of main event status as as the main guy, my main guy, a guy I could rely on as world champion for a while.
Yeah.
So, well,
I'm looking at how I would maybe utilize Batista, bringing Batista in. I'm thinking the way I'd like to maybe start that is maybe in a bodyguard. So I don't like the way he came in with as the Deacon, but I like that with his size, the bodyguard concept, and maybe having him be a bodyguard for someone like Kurt or Jericho, who can have the arrogance and can back it up in the ring, but also play the smarmy heel well. And so to hide behind a muscle for a little while and let Batista learn from them by watching them every night, I think that would be the way to go before you eventually start having Batista almost picturing it very similar to sort of Diesel. Then you start putting him in the ring and letting him beat guys up and build him up and probably build him to take the secondary title at some point as your start element before you break him away. Probably build him to similar to what they did then with Evolution, where he starts to feel used by whoever he's being bodyguard for, whether it be Jericho or Kurt. They start taking advantage of that, and then you build it up to when he does his big face turn, and goes out on his own. It will be a big match against a Kurt Angle or a Chris Jericho who can make him look $1 million in the ring. And we know that Batista can hold up his own end. So, I think that would be the good way to bring him along.
Yep, totally. And again, same thing with Orton. I think Orton is going to be a smarmy bastard because he has that look, that frat boy asshole look. So I think that's a guy that I'd still have Triple H take under his wing with Flair and bring him up the way that he was brought up in real life anyway. And 3-minute warning.
You could really have some fun with that, because with Shawn on the roster, you could even throw out the Shawn trying to dissuade Randy from doing it. Hey, I know what it's like to work with Triple H, and maybe that leads to Orton taking out Shawn Michaels and working a match with him.
Totally. Listen, Triple H only cares about one person. Triple H. You're just there to be. You're just meat. You're expendable. Don't think you're special. You're not. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Totally. Yep. I like our rosters. I think we did pretty good here. I think we had a theme, we had a tone, we stuck with that tone. Um, we split the fun stuff. You let me main event the Survivor Series with my chamber. You get the Royal Rumble winner. We have some fun at WrestleMania. We own it, Dave. I think we own it. I think we own WWFE, and then we see what happens over the next couple of years, and move things around, and maybe we redraft, or maybe we make some trades. Obviously, we're gonna have to move some guys because eventually, at some point, guys like Hogan and Austin and Rock are going to be gone. So we need to fill those spots. So we have to work on elevating, this talent. So I think I think we definitely worked ourselves in a good position.
Absolutely. It's been good. I think we've had some fun there tonight, and let us know what you think, guys. Let us know. Are you happy with the rosters? Do you think who do you think's maybe come out with the better end of the deal? Who maybe got the steal outside of The Rock? Who maybe got the steal of the draft? And is there something that you think we've missed there? Is there a storyline that we haven't touched on with our quick hand booking there that maybe you utilise with the rosters that we've put together? We'd love to hear from you. Give us some feedback. Scott, how can people do that?
Well, of course, you could follow me on Twitter at Scott C. Podfather, but follow the brand on Twitter at PTBN Wrestling. If you're listening to it when it drops, it's Wednesday. Go on Twitter right under the and tweet your opinions, or go to the Place to Be Facebook group or the Place to Be Nation page, also where the podcast will drop. And give us your thoughts. Who's got the better roster? Is there a guy that maybe I should have taken that Dave did, or Dave took that I should have, that may not fit his roster or may not fit my roster? Please give us your opinions. That's why we're here. We're here to take all fun, constructive, intelligent criticism, or just say they're awesome. We like that too. We'll definitely take that into consideration. Also, besides that, give us your thoughts on future episodes. If you have any ideas, we're due for another mailbag, maybe in a couple months. We can work on that and come up with something cool, that you may be interested in. But for the roster, just feel free to comment on the Twitter feed of the episode when it drops. Go to the Facebook page, both the Place to Be group and the Place to Be Nation page, and give us your thoughts. We look forward to it. Dave, where can everyone find you?
Everyone can find me on Facebook. I tend to be there. You can reach out to me, Dave Hall, on Facebook. If you want to. So if you're friends with any of the other guys, you'll probably find on Facebook friends with them. You can send me a PM that way, or touch base through the show, the episode posts in Facebook. You'll probably find you can leave a message there as well, and I'd love to touch base with you.
All right, and again, I told you where you can find me. So that'll do it for this month's episode of Through the Looking Glass. Thank you for listening. It was our pleasure to bring you another great episode. Join us next month for June. Not sure what we'll have yet. Dave's got some things running around in his head, which will probably be pretty awesome. And I may, if we decide to do a second mailbag episode for July, maybe in June I'll start. I'll send out a message to for you to give me to give both of us your mailbag questions. What if in an alternate universe, yabba dabba do, we'd love to do that. We'd love the first episode. We did that. We got a few leftover questions from the last episode we didn't get to, so we still have those. But please, we love the input. So kick it around. It may not happen till later in the year, but we may do it for July. So stick close by the socials in June I may be looking out for some some questions and some scenarios for Dave and I to chew on. So that'll do it for this month. Have a wonderful rest of May. We will talk to you next month in June through the looking glass.
Come on!